Good, good, good. No alcoholic beverages in. Okay, I'm sorry.
Oh, oh, this is
I know what that is.
my favorite. My favorite. You know.
Pellegrino.
She's taking it away. Okay, but I could go for 6 minutes without a sip. That's okay. So on the agenda, you know, you'll be talking about some allocation of funds in support of low income housing, and I did have the opportunity to review some of the past years of CDBG funding. Of course, we also have housing opportunity bond money, and I really think that we. And this is not to say, don't approve what's before you, but I really do think that we need to look at funding for support for tenants, including really legal assistance and programs that could educate tenants about their rights in the city of Atlanta. And as some of you know, I recently moved to the Hunter Hills community and got into a rent-to-own situation with a company called Divvy Homes that is out in San Francisco and has put forth a rent-to-own opportunity. The rent-to-own opportunity, I think, presents a lot of incentives for people who want to get into home ownership, but maybe are having issues with their credit or getting into a mortgage. And even with the great down payment assistance that's available, sometimes getting into that mortgage when you need one, it can be a challenge. So the rent to own, I think can be a good opportunity. I was a bit troubled to move into a home and find out that there were a number of repair issues that began to continue to be revealed. I reached out to the Atlanta Volunteer Lawyers, which is one of the groups that is, doing education and assistance around tenant rights in the city of Atlanta, and they said that, I don't want to make you, feel like, what you're going through isn't horrible, but it's quite common. It's quite typical. This is like what we deal with all the time, and there just aren't enough resources for them to deal, I think, with the caseload. And I, as a law student, did some negotiation around my lease. I actually, was able to identify things that I wanted to be changed. There are some things in the standard lease that, number one, say that the tenant shall be responsible for all repairs, which is actually contrary to Georgia law. That says that the tenant waives all rights to make counterclaims, waives all rights to a jury trial, waives the rights to make motions, which is unconscionable, shocking, and against Georgia law. Says that, if you don't pay rent on time, we can just come in and evict you without due process. What bothers me is that the other tenants who have signed these leases and the other people who may not know their rights, and this is just one company. It's an out-of-state company, and that in itself poses some problems when you have an out-of-state entity with no agents. There's a lot of things that we need to get a handle on, and as far as Divvy Homes, I have contacted them with the repair issues that need to be done, some of the environmental remediation issues, a lot of things that seem to be cleared violations of also the housing code. And so I'm also working with the Mayor's Office of Constituent Services to address what's happening with me. But you all know me. It's when something happens to me, I'm also always looking for, who else is in this class, and what can we learn from this? Where's the policy change? I don't know. Did we move the mic? Where's the timer? I don't know where I am.
I don't either.
My minutes. Thank you. Okay, thank you. I have to calibrate myself, right? Some of the things I would like for us to look at, number one, would be tenant protections that we can enact at the city level. So tenant-landlord law there's nothing that says that we in the city of Atlanta can't enact additional provisions that would supplement state law. So to the extent that, there's a Georgia tenant landlord law. I took tenant landlord law in Spokane in the state of Washington at law school. And so that's state of Washington has a very affirmative, proactive, specific set of provisions to protect tenants that Georgia doesn't have. And just for an example, like what type of notice is required if they want to come in, and if it's an emergency, if it's not an emergency, do they have to give you some 48-hour notice? Georgia doesn't say anything about that. This is just one example of things that we could possibly do. Now, the state does say that we can't do rent control, but the state hasn't yet said that we can't look at some other affirmative things. So I would like us to explore, thank you, basically like a city code of tenant protections, but also as we're trying to decide how to implement the housing bond and any housing monies, tenant education, tenant protection, and legal aid where funds allow. So thank you.
All right, thank you very much. A lot of food for thought, like for our housing department to ponder some of those things and get back to us with recommendations on those matters that we might be able to address as a city. Carrie's, is that Salvery?